Class. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mr. Martinez, for those of you that are new to my class. Today we're going to be learning about properties of real numbers. So, what I need you to do for me first is go ahead and take out your math notebook so we can take some notes. We're going to start with some definitions, work our way through some practice problems, then you're going to take some time to work on some practice problems individually, then we'll work on those together and make sure you understand them before I give you your homework for tonight to give you a little bit more practice at home. Okay? Everybody have their notebooks out? All right, so let's start with some definitions. The first definition we're going to look at is commutative property. Okay? The commutative property is the one that refers to moving stuff around. So what do I mean by moving stuff around? For example, if I say 3 plus 2, all right, the commutative property says that 3 plus 2 is also equal to 2 plus 3. The numbers flipped, but they're the exact same problem. That's what the commutative property says. Okay? Next, we're going to look at associative property. The associative property states that you can add or multiply regardless of how the numbers are grouped. Now, what do I mean by the word grouped? By grouped, let's underline that. We're going to talk about that right now. By grouped, I mean where the parentheses are in the problem. So let's look at another little example here for you. So if I do 2 times 3, put that inside my parentheses, and then multiply that by 4, what the associative property tells me is that is the same as 2 times 3 times 4. See how the parentheses moved? It changed the grouping, but this is the exact same problem. Okay? The last we're going to look at is a little bit of a larger property. It's the identity property. What the identity property tells us, it actually tells us 4 things. It tells us, excuse me, that any number multiplied or divided by 1 is that number. And it also tells us any number where you add or subtract 0 is still that number. So for instance, if we have 2 times 1, that's going to give us 2. If we have 2 divided by 1, the answer is still exactly 2. If I take 3 and I add 0 to it, it's still going to give me 3. If I take 3 and subtract 0 from it, it still gives me 3. Are there any questions about any of this so far? Good, so remember, we're focusing on, with the commutative property, we're focusing on the idea that the numbers can flip spots between whatever we're doing, and it's still the same, okay? The commutative property only works, however, with multiplication and addition. Then we're looking at the associative property. The associative property tells us that if we change the parentheses, the way that we group our numbers, then it still is the same problem. The associative property works with addition and multiplication also. Okay, we're just going to put that there so we understand that. And then the last one, the identity property, we're looking at multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. It tells us that if we multiply or divide by 1, we get the same number. If we add or subtract 0, we get the same number. Very good. So let's look at some problems over here. We're going to see how we work through these problems and make sure that they're true. Okay? So the first thing we want to look at, here's our first problem. Okay? We don't know what property this is yet. Okay, let's work out the problem first. We're going to get 2 plus 3 gives us what? Anybody? 5. Perfect. 2 plus 3 gives us 5. So here we go, there's a 5. And then we're going to say that's equal to, that means it's going to be the exact same thing. So we have 3 plus 2, that gives us what? 5. Perfect. Exactly. So are these two sides equal to each other? They are. Now let's look at what happened here. We had a 2 plus 3, and then the other side of the equal sign, we had a 3 plus 2. So what happened with those two numbers? They flipped. Exactly. So when we go back over here, we see the commutative property is the one that refers to moving stuff around, to flipping. So this is going to be what? The commutative property. We're just going to put a C right there. We know that's the commutative property. Very good. Now let's look at this property. Okay? So we see that we're multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting. So we can tell real quick which is the only property that we've spoken about, excuse me, that uses all 4 different math styles. It adds, subtracts, divides, and multiplies. Associative property, correct. So we're gonna put this for right now. We're gonna put that as using the associative property but let's check to make sure that it's true. Okay, so we have 5 times 1, so it gives us what? 5. So that's correct. That's using the associative property. Now we're going to divide by 1. We have 5 divided by 1, so it gives us what? 5. Good job. So we know that's using the associative property. Now let's come down here. We have 5 plus 0. We're adding 0 to something that's going to give us what? It's going to give us this number back again. Good job. That's 5. So we're still in the associative property. Last one, we have 5 minus 0. So if we take away 0 from 5, we still have what? 5. Excellent. So that means we're still using the associative property. That's great. You guys are doing amazing. Last one, let's take a look at this problem. It's a little bit more difficult. We have a lot more numbers going on here. So we start with what? Parentheses, PEMDAS. We've spoken about that before in prior lectures. So 2 times 3 is what? 6. Bring down the 4. What's 4 times 6? 24. Excellent. So let's look over here. Bring down this. Now let's work this side out. We always start with parentheses. What's 3 times 4? 12. Times 2 is what? 24. Great. So both sides are equal. We know that's correct. So they are equal to each other. Now which property did we use? Which one talked about grouping? Which one spoke about parentheses? Excellent. The associative property. I'm sorry. Ms. Martinez messed up again. I'm human. This is going to be our identity property. Thank you for letting me know that. This is the associative property. That was perfect. That's great. So everybody understands these, right? Yes? Show of hands, anybody has any questions? No? Okay, excellent. So this is what I'm going to do for you real quick. I'm going to write a few problems here on the board, and you're going to take some time to work them on your paper. And you're going to have to tell me, are they true? Do both sides equal to each other? And the second thing you're going to have to tell me is, which property does it follow? Does it follow the identity, the associative, or the commutative property? So here they are. There you go. Number 1. You're working these still in your binder. You're still working these in your notebook, so you have these problems. You have something to work on. That way also, if you don't get them correct, I can help you and we can figure out what we need to do to get you there. Okay? The first one, here's the first problem. That's number 1. Here's going to be number 2. Number 2 is going to be number 3. Okay, I give you about 10 minutes to work on those on your own. Go ahead and start working on those. All right, and time. Okay, so let's talk about these. Let's talk about these problems for just a second. We have 3 different problems. Remember, our first goal is to find out if they are true, which means both sides are equal to each other. And then if we find out they are true, then we're going to figure out which property was used to get us there. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. This was not a true or false statement, right? It's just telling us that 7 times 1 equals what? 7 times 1 equals 7. And when we look at our properties, which one tells us that a number times 1 gives us its number back? Correct, the identity property. So this is going to be the identity property. Awesome. That's great. So you all are understanding that concept? Correct? Great. Now let's look at our next problem. Work each side of the equal sign first. Let's start. So we have 2 plus 5 is going to give us what? 7. And it's telling us that that's equal to 5 plus 3, which is what? 8. So is that correct? Is 7 equal to 8? No. No, so is this one of our properties? No, it's not. So let's look at this. If I had done 2 plus 5, though, equals 5 plus 2, that would have given us what? 7 is equal to 7, correct? Now, are those equal? Yes. And what does that tell us? The numbers were what? Flipped, but the equals, which property is that? Commutative. Excellent. Y'all are doing amazing. Last problem, okay? Let's work this out. Remember PEMDAS. We start with our parentheses. 5 plus 2 is what? 7. Plus 3 gives us what? 10. Good. Let's look at this side. 2 plus 3 gives us what? 5. Excellent. Plus 5 gives us what? 10. Are those two sides of the equal side equal? Yes, they are. So what did we do? We grouped them. Remember we talked about that earlier? So which property is that? That's going to be our associative property. Excellent. So, in a few seconds, I'm going to hand out your worksheets. You're going to have about 10 problems dealing with all of these properties. Okay? Don't get confused when the numbers don't equal. If they don't equal, then you know that it doesn't follow one of our properties. Okay, so you have that to take home, and just remember that for today, we learned about what? We learned about the properties of real numbers. Okay, we spoke about commutative property, which means we're flipping our numbers. We learned about the associative property, where we're talking about grouping. We changed the way that the numbers are grouped, but they still equal the same. And we talked about the identity property, which tells us any number times or divided by 1 gives us that number. Any number where you add and subtract 0 gives us back that number. Okay? Great job, guys. You start backing up.